All right. Here we go again. Back again with another lockdown episode. Everyone, welcome to the other side of the coin. As you can all see, I've got a bit of a five-a-side team here today. It's a massive, massive panel, but the situation demands it. The topic for today in the last 24 hours, no, it's not about transfer news and it's not about which player is going to be suitable for us. It's something different. It's something I haven't had the opportunity to talk with all of these gentlemen here in depth, since this particular incident happened, which is the whole Sarri tenure. I've never got to sort of talk about his season last season, and since he's left, all sorts of sort of irrational comments at times, or even legitimate comments at times. I've just never had that chance to express those views with these gentlemen out here. So that's exactly what we're going to try and do here. And without further ado, let's get started. I want to first talk to perhaps a newbie, Michele. First of all, thank you for coming to the other side of the coin. How are you, man?
It's my pleasure, Miz. It's been a very long time in the making, that's for sure.
That is absolutely right. I'm so glad you're here. What I want to ask you, Michele, is when we first heard that Sarri was, appointed the manager of Chelsea, what were your thoughts as a fan? Thinking, okay, first of all, tell me what you knew about Sarri, and then sort of tell me what your expectation was with Sarri.
Okay, cool. Well, obviously, before his name even popped up, I pretty much had no idea who he was because we don't actually have the Syria broadcasting rights in South Africa. But as soon as we got linked to him and stuff, obviously, because I'm a football nerd, I just had to go do my research. And I pretty much instantly fell in love with Sarri Ball and his philosophy. And I knew at the time there was a lot of controversy of who are we going to appoint? Is it going to be Maximiliano Allegri? And are we going to continue our philosophy of pragmatic football? Or are we just going to flip it on its head and go for someone like Maurizio Sarri and change the culture of the club? And I was all for that, really. So, yeah.
Nice.
Expectation-wise, obviously, we've seen many managers come into the league and try change up clubs' philosophies. We've seen Pep do it at Man City. We saw what a difficult season he had there when I think they just clinched fourth and they got some pretty bad batterings along the way. So obviously, I was expecting for us to get top four. That should be any expectation for any big club, and a small cup along the way, and just seeing some progression.
No, fair enough. I think most of us probably had the similar sort of feeling as well when we heard about his name. I too, just like yourself, didn't follow too much of Serie A, and once I heard about him, I did my search, and I thought, okay, well, he plays a beautiful sort of possession-based sort of football, and that's probably what my expectation was. Now I want to ask Dami now. When we started the season, I still remember there was a bit of a euphoria. There was a bit of a euphoria in the sense that, okay, we're going to start playing differently and not that counter-attacking style anymore that we've been playing for years and years. Yes, no disrespect to that style. It's won us many, many trophies along the way, but we recall some really fond games that we've had with Barcelona where, we couldn't go toe-to-toe against them in certain games, even Bayern Munich and so on and so forth. And, when Sarri came in, there was this euphoria that our philosophy was going to change. What was your thoughts knowing that this was the case? And were you one of those people that thought this was just going to happen in one day?
No, because unlike Michele, I actually did used to watch the Italian league. When they said they were going to appoint Sarri, I was over the moon because I noticed Sarri in his second season at Napoli, and the football they were playing was just by the second season, I was like, God damn. And the third season was out of this world. Lovely one-touch football, excellent passing. Everything is so precisely done. So when he got to Chelsea and he started playing really well, I was very, very scared. Obviously, as a fan, I was happy that we were getting results and everything. But I knew what was going to come further down the line when the man said, oh, look, you guys, this is not something that you just master within just one season. He was very, very right. And I knew the snags and all the mishaps were going to come eventually, which they did. But when I just knew it wasn't going to be a one season process. So I mean, I'd have liked him to stay a bit longer, but Super Frank is here now. But yeah, I had known about the man for a very long time. And since he brought his son Jorginho as well, I was pretty confident that he would have, if given the time, been able to implement Sarri ball.
No, well said, man. Joe, what I want to ask now off the back of that, what Dami was saying, you know, we've been winning a lot over the last, 12, 15 years. And what Dami just said, that, and I agree with that as well, that, that type of philosophy wasn't going to materialize overnight. As a fan, from your perspective, who's watched a lot of football as well from many different leagues, what was your sort of take? Because I know there was a lot of fans saying, we are Chelsea, we should be winning every season. I don't believe in all this transitional BS. I don't have time for Sarri to, work his, philosophy. I want trophies ASAP. What was your sort of feelings towards all of that?
It's just, I just think it's flawed when people think that they're going to get instant success straight away because it's happened before. It doesn't mean it consistently happens when you make changes. Because obviously I follow Inter quite regularly and watch them often. I've been fortunate enough to see Sarri's Napoli absolutely batter them, and I was really quite happy when he came to Chelsea, because I knew that if you can make a team that isn't Juventus the dominant team in the league, that's a really impressive thing to do. Unfortunately, they came second, but they were top scorers. But you just have to look at Pochettino, you have to look at Klopp, you have to look at Pep. They all had struggles in their first seasons, and we all understood that this is a message from the board that we're trying to change philosophy now. We don't want to play pragmatic football. We want to play nice, beautiful football. It doesn't matter the results necessarily to start with. We're trying to implement a style and a philosophy, and even that's similar with Frank as well. There is a philosophy and cultural change, but I think with Sarri we were all excited, but people that want instant success, I think, maybe need to reevaluate how a club works over a period of time, especially Chelsea, since 2003 being the most successful British club. When you have to go through those periods of, the spine that we've historically had is gone. We have a couple of standout players, but we don't have what we used to have. And we've had someone come in who's from a different league, has a totally different philosophy from what we're used to. I think I knew it would take time, and I think a lot of fans knew that as well. But I think it was the connection that Sarri had with the fans over the period of time that caused the general dislike, because in fairness the results weren't that bad, and his win ratio is pretty decent as well. So I think originally people just had to be patient, but obviously it's Chelsea fan base, so they're not going to be that patient. But I was optimistic.
No, we're absolutely right. I think that's a perfect segue to my next question that I want to ask John is, we've sort of covered the initial stages. I think the boys have sort of said there was euphoria, there was this expectation that we were going to sort of be patient and understand this new style of football that we've not played. You're one of those fans that sometimes go to the matches and whatnot. Last season, did you end up going to any matches? And also what I want to hear from you is, in the initial stages, we were going okay. But even then, there was certain moments where I think the fans were booing the way we were playing, lots of sideways passing. Was this a lot sort of exaggerated, or was that really what was happening in the grounds in terms of that, sort of heavy atmosphere, I suppose?
I mean, I went to games last season, went to games this season. I think Lampard will get a lot more leeway because he is, the prodigal son. He's a legend at the club. So, his implementation of his style of football was always going to be given a bit more time than Sarri. But yeah, I mean, I'd say it was enjoyable going to watch the Sarri. I mean, we were so used to having an animated manager like Conte for a couple of years. He would run down the touchline, be really bullish. You could see his emotion. But Sarri was a bit more methodical, a bit more meticulous. He'd stand on the touchline, chew his cigarette butts or whatever. And, it was just a bit strange to transition from Conte to Sarri in the stadium, because it was a little bit of a different kind of feel from the manager. But, it was still good football. Yes, and it was a completely different style of play. But since Ancelotti in 2011, we didn't have that sort of manager that wanted to attack, wanted us to be on the front foot. So for Sarri to kind of want to have total football, to have the ball, and yes, there was going to be sideway passing and back, but his possession style football, that was always going to be something that was going to happen. So for me, it was still very enjoyable to watch. I just think, and again, I go back to the Conte point of him being so animated on the touchline. Sarri kind of stood there. He didn't want to come onto the pitch. He was very superstitious. And some Chelsea fans, I think in the stadium, especially the match-going ones, which are a very small percent of the worldwide fans, were just a little bit like, what's this guy doing? He's not going crazy on the touchline. He's not, coming out, talking about his love for Chelsea, his love of living in London. They kind of just, I felt they're like, he's just a bit ungrateful, which I thought was unfair because he's a manager doing a job. And we all do several jobs in our lives. We don't endear ourselves to that company and pronounce our love. So I thought it was a little bit harsh. His win rate, as Jay said, was fantastic. It was like 62, 63 something percent.
61.9.
Yeah, there you go. So that's a very good win percentage in your first year with a completely different style of football to implement. So I'm not his biggest fan. I'm not his biggest hater. I'm in the middle where I really appreciate everything he did. And if he'd have had more than one season, I think we would have kind of understood exactly what he could have brought to Chelsea, and it would have been quite successful, in my opinion.
No, well said, man. Before I go to Michele, I want to ask this next question to Dami, because I feel like he's watched a bit of Serie A and followed a few clubs over there. Off the back of what John was saying, the man knows what his style is. He sticks with that. He's done this for years and years and years with so many different clubs from grassroots football. There was moments where, even when we were going through a really, really good period in the beginning until we started hitting the tumultuous period in between, lots of people were demeaning his Napoli time. They were sort of saying, oh, what did he ever win there? What's so good about that football? He never won anything. What sort of, I suppose, give us some context around that. That is that right to say? Is that a smart thing to say about a manager?
I don't know. See, look, a lot of people seem to forget. In England, you have 6 teams going for the title. In all the other leagues in the world, it's like 2 or less. In Italy, it was Juventus. Like, nobody's touching the Scudetto in Italy. That was for Juventus. The fact that Sarri was able to push them so far as to achieving the highest points in one season and not winning the league. That's a massive statement from me. The things that killed Sarri that season, unfortunately, and I have to bring this up, is the fact that the players, he doesn't like rotating. He doesn't like rotation, so the players got a bit more tired. Assuming he he might have done, if he had done some rotating, maybe they would have won the league. But for you to say, oh, he's never won a trophy in 23 years, see this man's come up. He was a banker. Look at all the clubs he's managed. The only clubs that, like, you can't be managing like a tier 2 side and be expecting the manager to have won a trophy. The fact that he's even gotten to Chelsea means something in the first place. Now he's manager of Juventus. Do you get where I'm coming from? That's a fantastic build-up. He's won his first trophy at Chelsea. So what? Was managing the Napoli side was basically nothing. He took that Napoli side, because I started watching Serie A properly when in Sarri's second season. And that was not the main reason why I started watching. I watched because of Juventus and Inter Milan. But I digress. So for you to say that the man wasn't a good manager because he hadn't won anything or he didn't have anything on CV is very, very unfair, if you ask me, especially when you look at where he's coming from, what he has done, and who he was managing. So that's just my take on the whole. He doesn't have anything on the CV. And
it's so important to understand, as you said, Juventus was a monopoly. There was no one touching them. Just like Bayern Munich in Germany most times, Juventus just had, they won like 7, 8, 9 in a row, something like that, Scudettos, and it was the first one to, push them to the limit and almost pipped it off Juventus as well. Michele, what I want to ask you now is, we went through that tumultuous period in the middle, very similar to what we kind of went through this season, right? And I want to base a comparison here. And I know contexts are different. Last season we didn't go through transfer ban and we didn't have a new manager. I mean, I suppose I don't want to say the word rookie. It kind of sounds like, but it is what it is. Lampard's in his first season, so it's a rookie manager. We had someone who's an experienced manager, but nonetheless, the timeline of the tumultuous period was similar, up and down, win one, draw one, lose one, win one, draw one, lose one. Last season, none of us here, I remember, we did not hesitate. Whenever Sarri did poorly, we expressed that this is where he was going wrong. He could do better. This season, however, if you did that, even with the context behind, you get crucified, against other fans saying, "Oh, you can't say that about Lampard. You can't. No, he's just learning." Why is? I mean, I understand the bit about him being a legend, but I just feel there was parts where journalists didn't favor him too much, or the media didn't favor Sarri too much, and they of course favor Lampard. Do you think that's fair in terms of a global sort of image of the game?
I mean, of course not, but I mean, that's pretty much just football Twitter. It's just full of hypocrisy. You can lay out the facts of either side and they'll still just choose whichever side suits their decision of who to support and why to support that said person. And obviously, another major issue last season was Maurizio Sarri's constant reminder that the team is difficult to motivate. And people were so quick to say, well, I mean, it's the manager's fault. Why doesn't he motivate his own players? It can't be the players, it's the manager. But if you just look back a little further, you'll notice that Mourinho has said they were hard to motivate. Antonio Conte, Frank Lampard. So,
Frank Lampard
so just shoveling the hate at Sarri makes no sense. And also, just to touch on the question you asked Dami, anyone who you'd come across that argues about Maurizio Sarri will tell you that he wasn't a serial winner. And when you ask them who is a serial winner, they'll drop names like Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte. But what they will not tell you is that Maurizio Sarri's Napoli side acquired more points than Maurizio Sarri's Scudetto winning Juventus and Jose Mourinho's double winning Inter Milan. So again, it's just full of hypocrisy.
No, fair enough. Jay, I want to now talk about some flaws of Sarri. We've touched about his, what he was as a manager, what he could bring. We've kind of covered, that he is a smart individual. But let's not forget the fact that there were several instances last season where, things weren't going his way, and he's a stubborn character, who likes to keep things constant, I suppose. Now, what I want to ask you is, and we kind of touched this before we went live, where he's a person I feel like he believes in a particular set of philosophy, right? Whether it's not working or not, he believes in it and he feels that over a certain time it will come good. Was that the right thing to do from a manager, I suppose, from a Chelsea Football Club point of view? And, was that something that Chelsea fan base probably wasn't ready for, knowing that all the success that we've had in recent times?
Well, I think with Sarri, right, there was two main things that were the criticisms that he would face regularly, and that was stylistic and tactical rigidity. And his you would know in the 65th minute that Kovacic is coming off for Barkley, or that Barkley's coming on for Kovacic, and you'd know that before the game even started. And there would be matches where you would feel like a bit of pragmatism would help, because you could be more direct and perhaps challenge the side that's currently beating us, even if we just swapped a few things around, moved a couple of players and switched up the system. But that's not how he works, and sometimes you have to accept that certain managers work in that way, and it's a tough thing to deal with. It's a cultural thing. You look at the way he plays, and I don't like using the phrase, it's like tiki-taka football, right?
Yeah.
In the UK, we're not used to that. British football doesn't really play that football. Even Pep now is not what Pep was at Barca. And the first time that English fans really saw it to the highest quality was when Manchester United got battered by Barcelona in the Champions League final 3-1. And the thing is, fans, I don't know if a lot of people, especially British fans, understand necessarily that when you're playing that style and you have the possession and these sideways passes are going on, you defend as well as attack with the ball. So the sideways passes have a function even if they're not attacking. It's a concept that doesn't maybe look that great, especially when you see Pep Guardiola's Barcelona playing tiki-taka football, and they can defend by keeping the ball whilst trying to press and push. But it takes ages to get to that level. I just think that because it was so obvious that he wasn't giving chances to people he perhaps should have more so, and it was so obvious the substitutions he was going to make, that I think fans very quickly grew annoyed of how stubborn he appeared to be, but actually he just fundamentally believed in the system he was trying to implement. And sometimes a legacy doesn't necessarily mean trophies. You look at people know what Sarri ball is, even though he hasn't won that many trophies, and great managers don't have to win trophies to be great all the time. You look at Bielsa, he's managing Leeds, he's one of the greatest managers of all time. Leeds are a big club, championship club at the moment, and he's not been promoted with them yet, but still Bielsa's legacy will be massive. Sarri was trying to do the same, he just didn't have the time, and unfortunately, when we have, like I said to you earlier, we've had youth players in the academy and they've gone on loan and we've wanted them to play for so long, and when you can finally see people like Hudson-Odoi and Loftus-Cheek, who are the cream of the crop, who are the best that we've got and probably the best that's come through in a long time, not getting the opportunities, I think that was the end of the line for the fans, because they were willing to accept a cultural and philosophical change, but I don't think they were willing to have this total football change. I think what they wanted was youth to play. I think they wanted a physical demonstration of core Chelsea values, which is what you have in Frank Lampard, and I think that's why they brought him in, and unfortunately Sarri was just a square peg for a round hole at the time. He's not a bad manager, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find people that say that he is a bad manager. They tend to just point flaws about how he's stubborn and he's lied that players really liked him, when actually that's not the case at all. He just didn't necessarily fit for the fans at the time. It was just, and it's a shame, because if he'd have had 2 or 3 years, we'd be unbelievable. we still came third, right? Won the Europa League without losing, 61.9 win percentage, which is the 6th best of Premier League history. Like,
exactly, there you go. That's the kind of stats that I like. Unlike without Kante winning stats and all of that kind of stuff. But it's so true though, Joe, that if given time, he could have. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. We have Frank Lampard now, but I just wonder sometimes what it could have been. Before I go back to Dami, I want to ask John here now. Sorry, I gave away your name. It's Manhandle CFC. Oh, no. Everyone forget about that name. That's not true. It's Manhandle CFC. Off the back of what Jay was saying, Chelsea board selected Sarri, right? They hired him. They would have done some sort of research of all the stuff that we've said right here, specifically what Jay was saying just a moment ago, that he's a believer in his philosophy. He sticks to his, consistent play. He's, he has the Kovacic for Barkley, or Barkley for Kovacic substitution. As board members, when they hired him, surely they would have known all the characteristics of this man.
Yeah, I think they must have known, and it was certainly a cultural change. I think Chelsea wanted to go in a different direction. It was a shame it didn't work out, but I'm just going to touch on a few points that some of the other guys have made. Let's talk about, in terms of football, we're talking about the style of football English fans are used to. I mean, certainly as a kid, I was used to 4-4-2, rugged, rigid style of play. You lump the ball up. I was a striker. All of my mates would just lump the ball over top. I'd run onto it, put the ball in the back of the net. And it happened for a long time. The youth culture in this country was very much 4-4-2, not amazing football, just get the win, grind it out, done. Look at England over several years until Southgate's come in. We pretty much had a 4-4-2. That's why we couldn't incorporate Lampard, Scholes and Gerrard. We weren't that attacking. We were more solid defensively. We weren't that entertaining to watch. That's one point I wanted to make. The second one, in terms of Sarri's experience and his trophy haul, everyone goes on about how amazing Pochettino is, such a great manager, much loved in the media and by fans. What has he won as a manager? Nothing. What has Sarri won as a manager in 1 year at Chelsea? Europa League. So I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism. Whereas, it all depends. Are you loved or are you not? Pochettino's loved, Sarri isn't. So he gets a lot more criticism. And again, the third point I wanted to make was Lampard. When he came in, he had it really easy. He identified what Chelsea fans wanted: youth players, a bit more, obviously entertaining football, and just that passion and will to play for the club, and the fact that obviously he was a Chelsea legend really helped. Sarri came in, he had to completely change everything in a really short space of time. Yes, again, we started really well at the beginning, and it was always going to, tail off. Just like Lampard's start, we started really well. People were always going to find us out, and we were always going to struggle. And Sarri was just unfortunate that he had such a short space of time. It's just his personality as well. I mean, there was a quote by Sky yesterday where he said, I'd rather, instead of praising players, I'd rather, point out their mistakes. And some Chelsea players, they're talking about motivation. They don't like that. They used to, be mollycoddled and, being all about them. And people expect players to adapt in game. But we've seen over several years, and history's told us, if a manager dictates or tells you to play, players just think like that. They don't think outside the box. Oh, maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. They will follow the guidelines of the manager. So if he's going to be rigid in his style of play, that's what's going to happen. Yes, it was a bit predictable. We'd always laugh when Sky would say, or BT, there's a substitution and blah, blah, blah. But, as Jay said, and the others, that's just, he believed in his plan. And Pep Guardiola was very, very stubborn in his first year of football, in English football. This is going to work. This is my way. I'm not changing it for anyone. And, after City fans realised that, the second and third season, they were massively successful. Sarri didn't get that opportunity. So I know I went a little bit off topic from your question, but
no, that's fine.
I just wanted to kind of summarise those points. And I just think a lot of fans are just, I'll go to the word I used earlier, ungrateful. I think he should have just been given a little bit more appreciation.
Why has the board failed to, and I know the board has never sort of publicly come out and backed any manager, but knowing that they've handpicked this guy to come and, manage us, why have they sort of going through all that rough times, did not sort of vocal out a little bit more to say, here's our man?
Oh, was that for me again? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just, the Chelsea board are not known for coming out and backing managers. Mourinho wanted it a few times, it didn't happen. And I just think a board's not really going to do that. But when Sarri came in, his objectives were get us top four, try and get us a trophy. He certainly achieved that. Third place, Europa League, that we won, that's got us back in Champions League. Without forgetting the league, we were in the Champions League, and that was our aim. And as I go back to Lampard having it, we're in the Champions League this season. He had it a lot easier than Sarri did, trying to change a complete philosophy and culture. So, I think the board knew what they were getting into. I think he couldn't have expected much more backing, and it just seemed when he left Chelsea, it was like, okay, you're going to Juventus. Fine. I don't think they were overly enamoured by him. And I think maybe they could have even been a little bit more appreciative as well, especially as the fans as well. So it's very interesting how we work, and the Chelsea culture is they're trying to change it, aren't they? Obviously, Mourinho coming in and stuff. So
No, fair enough. Dami, now what I want to ask you of all these conversations that we've had is, in this season, we've seen many times where Frank has done quite a few similar things that Sarri was doing last season, i.e. the Kante position. Frank didn't play Kante in a different sort of position. Okay, fine, fair enough. There was double pivot here and there, but whenever we played the 4-3-3, you played Kante on the right side where Sarri was playing. Sarri said a lot of comments which sort of resonated the same way what Frank was saying in terms of Callum Hudson-Odoi, how Sarri was saying that, media needs to protect this kid. He needs to be protected because he's only young, and Frank said similar sort of stuff. And there were many other, stylistically as well, there were moments where you could see a bit of Sarri ball from last season as well with the style they were playing. Tell me more about that. Fans always get into this that, Sarri's gone and that's it. Frank's not going to look into reference any of that, but it seemed like that he was referencing a lot of it.
I have so much I can say about this. This is one of the things I was trying to get across yesterday when I was having arguments with Flip, and I don't give a damn if you watch this and blocks me after. Because the thing about discussions like this is I'm always respectful. Okay, I'm always respectful. That's why when he went on his blocking spree, I wasn't blocked. He unfollowed me, but I wasn't blocked. Okay. No, I mean, but see, thing is, I am respectful about how I go about my things, and my biggest issue with, and I mean, this might be like I'm going off topic a bit, but my biggest issue with this Sarri thing is, I know people don't really like him as a person. That's down to you. And Manhandled, like you just said, people are not used to not seeing this animated individual on touchline. And because of that, any single thing he did, they just like said, okay, you know what? I don't like the fact that you're doing this. You should have done it this way. My biggest issue with this sort of thing is, if someone is doing a good, just because you hate someone doesn't mean you should discredit their hard work. Don't undermine the good things that they've actually done. That's my biggest issue with this problem. Do you know how many things? Can you imagine Frank trying to play the football he played this season without Sarri having been there before? With all those dead donkeys like Rudiger. But let me know. Okay, I reserve my comments, not dead donkeys. Unlike players like Rudiger and Marcus, can you cut that out? Marcus Alonso and Rudiger and the likes of those lot. See, those players are not, if not for Sarri, they wouldn't be able to play this football that Lampard is trying to play. I'm not saying it's a carbon copy of what Sarri did. Sarri was more possession-based. Lampard is being more direct. But without, I just saw a tweet by Mark Worrell as I was, you guys were talking, and he just summed it up beautifully. Without Sarri, Lampard wouldn't be able to do the things he did this season. It's as simple as that. And I don't know why it's so difficult to acknowledge that sort of thing. I tell you that people said it was a Hazard carry job. When I'm just referencing tweets from different people. I think it was it
James.
Matisse? I can't remember. Was it not even James? Was it Matisse or London Football? Yes, London Football was like, when Messi had his best season, people were just hyping Guardiola, saying, oh my God, Guardiola did this. Obviously, people praise Messi, but they also praise Guardiola. But when it comes to Sarri and Hazard, it was a Hazard carry job? Really? Hazard's best season in the Chelsea shirt was the season when a manager with an attacking philosophy comes in. That's a coincidence. That's borderline agenda. Genuinely. When you come onto the platform and call me a Sarri lover, what's wrong with you? You have a picture of Mason Mount as your Avi. What do you even mean? Does that make any sense? Look, the thing is, I don't care. I fully do not care. Look, before I used to care, but if you're going to come on, disrespect someone without having any facts, and then disrespect me for giving you facts and you can't respond, then I'm going to come at you like this. That's the reason why I attacked him yesterday. I'm serious. It's as simple as that. It's funny a bit, but that's just the reality of the matter. You can't come onto the platform and start spouting nonsense when you don't have any evidence to back it. You need to give credit where credit is supposed to be due. I'm going to stop talking there. I'm just going to stop.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Michele, I want to now go to off the back of that, because that reminded me of a very, very unique video I made, and probably something that started off my whole "here's a message for you," drama off the back of that. I don't know if you recall, my very first video I went after was Liam Toomey, and Liam, thankfully enough, retweeted that. That's very gutsy of him to do that. He specifically wrote an article straight after we won the Europa League that Hazard won the whole thing for us. We were third because of Hazard, and we won the Europa League because of Hazard. And I went after him, and I said, that is utter disrespect for the rest of the team that has done so much dirty work behind Hazard. Hazard's not the one that kept all the clean sheets. Hazard wasn't the one that did all the heroics in Frankfurt when I was in tears, in that semi-final when, Kepa made those saves. It was such an emotional game. That one was such an emotional season as well. How do you feel when people say, and they discredit, someone like Sarri like that just by saying Hazard carried that whole season?
It really is just kind of ridiculous. And I think the other three people that are on this podcast with me have summed it up quite beautifully, each of them. Like when John, or Manhandled, was talking about did you mention the Guardiola and Messi thing? Yeah.
Well, I
like-
touched on Guardiola about his
Yeah.
belief in his way, but yeah.
Yeah. And you also mentioned the fact that, like, in the English media, if the media doesn't like you, they just don't like you. There's nothing you can do about that. And they're just going to come at you time after time. They're not going to try feed you any positives. And that is one major issue that I really have with it, that Sarri he was just really thrown to the shit. Like, the whole season. It's pretty much just what he was dealt with. And I don't really want to add anything more onto the dissertation that Dami just dropped, because that was just fantastic. So, yeah.
Thank
Kudos
you,
to Dami.
Dami, for that, and thank you, Michele, for that. Off the back of that, Jay, something that just reminded me when I was listening to Matt Law, who was in Alex Goldberg's podcast not that long ago, and something that really, really struck me while he was having that interview. I don't know if you got to listen to that, Jay, but Matt Law specifically said, Frank gets it. Frank understands it. He's very, very likable towards the journalist. He kept on repeating this word, gets it. He understands. Why is it so important for the UK journalists to have the manager get it?
Okay, so as far as I'm aware, I did listen to that podcast. UK media is absolutely insane, right? So Frank Lampard, private school lad. His dad was also a footballer. His uncle Harry Redknapp, right? These are people that are very well known in the British media. They're very well liked generally. Harry's had a bit of a tough time, but he's now pretty well liked after cameos and TV shows, etc., etc. So you have to understand that it's so deep rooted in UK media culture. There's inherent racism, there's inherent classism, there's so many issues, and there is xenophobia as well, right? So when you have someone like Lampard, and we all love Lampard, right? Lampard is he's my favourite player of all time. I wouldn't be surprised if he's yours. He's the Chelsea legend, arguably our greatest player. But he is a white, wealthy, privately educated individual. And obviously he's going to be treated better in the media than someone who's foreign or of a different race or of a different class. So
Man, I love you for saying that, honestly.
Frank,
You're the first person that's come out and actually said that.
but it's true. Frank does get it. He gets what Chelsea fans want. He knows what it means to be part of the fabric of that club. That's true, but he also will benefit, and it's something that won't get spoken about, especially on Chelsea Twitter, because there's a tendency to think in certain different political ways, and that Frank is a privately educated. He's a wealthy white man, and he's going to get a nicer rub of the green than certain individuals in the media. So Frank does get it. Other people won't get it as much in the media because they're not the same as him. They don't come from the same lineage. They don't have the same background. It's just the way it is, and you see that echo throughout British society in general. It's not just football. Football is just a release for groups of people to sort of expound their feelings and their emotions and their inherent thoughts and beliefs. And unfortunately, sometimes football culture can be really quite cruel. I also think that we will come across as though we're all being Sarri fanboys, but it's not just that. I think what it is we have to objectively look at his season, and there were downfalls. Everyone knows it. He was predictable. He was stubborn. He didn't give enough chances as Chelsea fans would have wanted. But he also had a good win percentage. We came third. We got to a cup final. We won a European trophy. You have to balance both things out. But going back to Frank, he will get a nice ride in the media. He always has done. He's well spoken. He's articulate, and that's quite rare for a football player, especially. He's from the era where football players got a really tough time in the media. You look at what happened to Wayne Rooney, Rio Ferdinand. They got absolutely slaughtered in the late 2000s, early 2010 period. They got absolutely obliterated by the media, and that's just the way it was. You look at the whole wag culture. Their wives were being targeted, and Frank often got a nicer ride because he was a privately educated boy. He was more quiet and more well spoken, and sometimes those things actually just need to be said.
No,
I
absolutely.
want to add to that as well. And like, this is looking at it from Sarri's perspective. What happens when you combined a media that is money hungry, okay, a manager that's massively hated by the fan base, someone who is foreign, and is not very. The way he expresses himself in English is not as clear as his Italian. When you merge all of those things together, it's going to be a gigantic shit show. That's what it's going to be, genuinely. Because, like, sometimes he had a translator beside him just so that he could get the appropriate message across, so that people don't misinterpret him. And he was an honest man. So when you add all these things together, in fact, he was too honest for his own good. So the media saw all of that and were just like, you know what? This man is honest. He can't really speak English well. So when you combine those two things and fans that hate him, oh my God, anything you say flies. Anything you say flies for the clicks, to buy the newspapers, the people like The Sun, the Daily Mail. That's where you get all of those things from. So I wanted to add to that, like you said, Frank, I mean, you already basically said what you said for Frank, but I just felt like I needed to say that for Sarri's side as well. So
no, it's so true. So true, Dummy. And I wanted to ask now to Manhandle, is that off the back of that, the whole thing that Jay and Dummy was telling about the media taking the mad run on it. We then saw certain players post-season come out and start talking a whole heap of negative stuff about Sarri as well. i.e., Robert Green came out and he the Baku hero, and he had a lot of choice words to say about him. I think Cahill himself as well came out. That's understandable. What I want to ask you is a manager to blame when they come into a club? They assess what they need, so they look at all the players and they go, okay, in my mind, I know how I want to play, and I kind of know what each individual are bringing. Is it that bad for a manager to then say, you, and you, I don't need you. Go and find another club on loan because you don't fit my style. I've made the decision. Yes, you're going to say to me, oh, well, at least give me a chance. No, I don't have time to give you a chance. Chelsea is a kind of club that doesn't give time. I've made my decision. Go ahead. Why still then, players like Cahill or Robert Green or whoever, come out and talk down on these sort of people? I remember even Fabregas, when he left, he had some choice words to say about Jorginho being the son. I wasn't going to get any game time because his son was there. Do you think that's appropriate?
No, it's not. I mean, you look at those three names you mentioned. Green never played. Cahill phased out. I mean, he wasn't the best defender in Chelsea's history. Very successful, great defender, but he looked fantastic at playing alongside Terry. Not to discredit his qualities as a defender, but he looked better with someone else who was solid. And he was phased out. He didn't particularly like it. You look at Cesc Fabregas, quality player, didn't particularly. Because of Jorginho, didn't really fit into Sarri's style of play. I mean, I would have been a little bit bitter because of what he did for Chelsea and Cesc Fabregas. And he wasn't cast aside, but he was kind of just edged towards the door. So I get why he was upset. The other two, it was a little bit silly. But I want to touch on a few points again, like I did earlier. Emre, he came in, couldn't speak English. He was abused racially and so many other things. The way he speaks, some of the words that he used that constantly, even now, people take the mick out of, which I've called out on Twitter. It's disgraceful. You're telling us English people, who are the most stubborn people on this planet, if you don't talk English when I go on holiday to Thailand, oh, what a joke, you don't speak English. I'm sorry, we need to understand that it is very difficult to learn another language. English, people think is really easy, but actually, if you break it down, it is, especially when you're writing, very difficult language to learn, English. So for a foreign manager like Sarri to come in, who's spoken Italian, who's lived in Italy for so long, I mean, that's why he said he didn't really like living in London, loved the Premier League, but it's very difficult to adapt. So that really cheeses me off when people say stuff like that. But the other thing I want to touch on, Hazard, fantastic talent. I love him. Now, I get criticised because I have wanted in the past, when he was at Chelsea, I just feel he could have been a bit more successful. Him and other players around him, he wasn't given the best tools. I think maybe that Sarri season could have been done before. Was it a case of a manager not challenging him? Possibly. Is it his mentality? I don't know. But the fact that Sarri managed to eat that out of a player who was coming into his prime is quite sensational for him. And you've got to give him respect for that and not just say it's all down to Hazard. Now, I go back to the point I was trying to make was, Frank Lampard was in the shower, naked. This is well reported. Jose Mourinho comes in and says, "You're the best player in the world." And Lampard goes, "Oh, wow." Lampard was one of the players that Jose Mourinho built the team around. Okay, he had a great spine, check Terry Drogba as well. But he challenged Lampard to be the player that he became. And Sarri did exactly the same with Hazard. There's so many quotes, him saying Hazard should be scoring 30 goals in a season. And Hazard had his best goal scoring year because he had a manager who was attacking and that believed in him. So you can't call it a Hazard show. And yeah, it really annoys me when I talk about the fact he couldn't speak English fantastically, his mannerisms, the way he comes across. Again, Jay said some great points about Lampard. He's got so many GCSEs, Latin, they talk about. But he got a very, very favourable run in the media. But if you look at him, a lot of the other players are married, got kids, he got divorced, Lampard. So he's probably had more in his life to pick at because of his background and some of the things that have happened. Because he's had other controversies I'm not going to go into, but he was always well loved. And when he came, I don't want to start talking about stuff like that on a football discussion, but it all comes together where it's always go back to media love you, media hate you. And Sarri just instantly slot into the hate bag, and no one was willing in the media to come out and go, actually, fair play to the guy. And I think that's that the English fans are quite tribal still, that the fans that go to games, they're a certain type of person. There's nothing wrong with that. We have different people in society, but the people that go to games were the sort of people that they'll listen to the media and go, well, there's not much good Sarri talk, I don't like him. And as I say, it goes back to the animation on the touchline. So there's a lot of things that I'll go back to. I'm not Sarri's biggest fan. I'm not his biggest hater. I fully appreciate and respect everything he did. With more time, he would have done a lot better. So yeah, to sum it up for me, Sarri was a good manager, a very good manager who tried to implement a style of play that was very difficult to do at a club like Chelsea at the time.
I'm glad. See, I respect everybody's opinion on this podcast. Okay, everybody's like we're all smart individuals, and like our Twitter account show it and everything. People agree with all, but I am so glad that Manhandled in particular has said all of these things.
Yeah.
The reasons are clear and obvious. Manhandled, you're older than me. You're like what, 8, 9, 10 years older than me. You're also a match-going fan. You're a match-going fan as well, and. For you to so it's not like people can easily attack Miz and be like, oh, Miz doesn't live in the UK, he's not a match going fan. Same thing can go for Michele. They can say the same thing to me. I mean, they can say the same thing to Jay, but Manhandled goes for matches, okay? And then it's not like he wasn't there during the Sarri thing. He appreciates and can see what Sarri was actually doing. I'm just glad that it's coming from you as well. Does that make any sense? Because majority of the people that actually do attack this man are it's as simple as that. The beer drinking gang of Stamford Bridge, that's who attacks Sarri at the end of the day. I've had people come up to me and tell me, oh, come out and meet up at the pub and we can have a discussion. And I said, all right, let's go down and do it. And then because you find I'm a 6'6" black guy, you're going to be like, no, I'm not coming around again because I'm scared. It doesn't make any sense. It's as simple as being able to look at something, even if you don't like him. If Manaldo came and said he didn't like him or he appreciated the work he has done, end of discussion. Simple. And you have my respect. But for you to come and start insulting the man and discrediting comments that he has said because you don't like him, that's borderline disgraceful.
You have to. I think we have to just be not careful, but we have to word ourselves correctly and intelligently enough so that everyone can understand what we're saying. There's no one attack on specific cultures of football. British football culture is a certain way, and that affects the society around them. That generally affects the politics that they adhere to. But there's nothing inherently wrong with anyone that goes to games, with anyone that believes in anything. You're totally allowed to think what you think, and you're totally allowed to voice your opinion. But I think what the message is from everyone on this podcast is essentially, we're just trying to look at things objectively. We're looking at hard facts. We're not trying to. You can't criticize our facts with your opinion. They're two different things. Your opinion isn't always a fact. So those things need to be taken into consideration.
There's objective and subjective.
Yeah, of course. And we also are saying that, there were issues. Lampard's now doing the right thing. Everyone loves him. Everyone backs him. It's unfortunate Sarri got the run-in he did, but he done the best with what he could. I think we can all agree with that. I think it was a complete clash of cultures. It was a complete clash of, it was sort of the end of the line, wasn't it, where we wanted youth players playing, we wanted someone who understood what it was to be part of the club, not someone to just come into the club. And even at Chelsea, winners don't get time. So we have to understand with Lampard, we're finally going to, I think, give someone time who won't win something, but who's willing to put the hard work in, and that has put the work in on the pitch and is now going to do it from the sidelines. So we're not attacking any specific group of people. We're just trying to essentially objectively look at stuff just so that we can have conversations on Twitter after this where people don't think they're being particularly purposefully slagged off, because that's not necessarily the case, but it's just we are trying to look at things objectively, facts-based.
100%.
Yeah, because it's not one person or one issue from one group of people, but it was a combination of media. Match-going fans didn't like him. You have the power of social media where you can essentially create your own news, and then because that gets loads of clicks, the media are going to join in because they want those clicks, and then it just snowball effect to some extent.
And snowball effect.
And Sarri was the end of the line for Chelsea fans because you wanted young players playing. You wanted a manager that understood what it was to be part of the club. So all those things sort of culminated with Sarri being the figurehead for that, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've actually got the privilege to speak to many other match-going fans last season, and so many said to me, I remember in DMs or wherever else, in tweet replies, they would say to me, it's not as bad as some people are showing it in football Twitter. It's there were certain parts of the fans that would boo or do this, but that wasn't the majority. There was a lot that was actually backing Sarri as well, which I think, as you guys have all pointed out, I think football Twitter sometimes is a bit of it's not the true story all the time, in terms of what's actually happening in real life. Before we finish it off, I want to ask one question to each of you guys, the same question. I want to get your response, and then we'll end it off. I'll start off with Michele here. We've all talked about how, Jay specifically has mentioned about the youth and how we wanted to see the youth play, this season, albeit because obviously we've had the transfer ban and whatnot. We needed them to be our depth. But even last season, we've had many, many big accounts. Even Alex himself was, pushing for youth players to play more. How much do you think, and honestly think about this, next season, Frank, for me, this was a easy past season. It was more just see us through this difficult period. But we know Chelsea that there are certain standards, and Frank has mentioned that. Frank has repeatedly said Chelsea Football Club has certain standards, and we've got to meet those standards season in, season out, whether that be challenging for titles and being in the top four and being in the top echelons of Champions League and whatnot. How much do you think Frank is going to start thinking, I can't always rely on youth next season. I actually need some experienced, top-notch players in my team?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. But like you said, when will Frank realize that he might need a little bit more maturity in the squad? And we've actually already seen that. We've got two fantastic young dynamic wingers in Christian Pulisic and Callum Hudson-Odoi. And what has Frank done? He's brought in Hakim Ziyech, someone with Champions League experience and a decade of league experience. And I don't think we'll see too much of a change in the starting lineup when it comes to youth players. I think that the players that have played have showed their class and their worth and that they should play. Players like Reece James, Tammy Abraham, these are players that you can't go out and buy for less than £60 million. So I think they will definitely keep their place. And what I would rather do is just bring in players not to replace them, but to push them. We've seen what experienced players can do to younger players. We've seen what Ballack has done for Frank Lampard. So I would honestly just bring in players like an Edison Cavani to push someone like a Tammy Abraham or Dries Mertens, just stuff like that, because the players have potential. We've seen throughout their youth careers, they've been the most successful players in their positions in the country. They've won countless titles, European titles, domestic titles. So I think we've got all the key ingredients there. It just depends how Frank wants to use them.
Yeah, manhandle CFC. Do you think next season Roman is going to be, think about the tumultuous sort of middle session that we had this season, defensive frailties that we've constantly talked about in many other shows. Do you think next season those sort of things will be easily disregarded because it's a, Frank's a new manager and he's playing youth. Will that excuse fly next season?
It's tough to tell, to be honest. It depends on how many people we sign. I think it really does depend on that. So I think Lampard and the board want to sign some players. Obviously, we've signed Ziyech already. We've had rumours with quite a few other players. We need to supplement the youth and the quality that we have in the squad, because I'm an advocate for having two in every position. So we're not going to get to that position in this transfer window. And Lampard did get leeway this year because of the transfer ban, because of the amount of youth that he brought through. But a lot of youth have now been integrated. Next season, in my opinion, you've got to target at least third, so a position above. You've got to target another cup run. We've got to get further in the Champions League. And if we don't, then you can, I'm not going to say you can lambast Lampard, but you've got to, okay, well, we've built okay in the first year. Second year, we've got you a couple of players. The youth have had an extra year of experience. We should be seeing a slight progression every year. And that's really all I want to see. At least third, cup run, Champions League run, better. So I think that's what he'll be judged on the transfers, because whilst it's not just his say on the transfers, he ultimately is the one picking the players and managing the players. So it's going to be tough if we don't sign players. I think we'll sign a few, and if we do, as I said, I expect a bit of an improvement. And if he doesn't, will he be given leeway by the fans? Probably more than others. But we've talked about everything very objectively here. We have to do the same with Lampard. The first year, as his second year as manager, we've been softer on him. Even me, especially looking at the defence. Any other manager, I'd be like, what is this? But I've gone, okay, it's Lampard. We're trying to be attacking. We haven't got the players. But next year, if we make those basic mistakes, even if we had the same centre backs, we didn't buy new ones, I'd go, come on now, this is a little bit ridiculous. So yeah, there's a lot of things that need to happen. I think some of them will, which will help Lampard propel us to the next stage, which is kind of challenging for the top 2-3 places in the Premier League. So.
No, too right. Dami, there's been many times where, Frank has said that we've lacked the maturity. There's been games where, we ended up losing 1-0 or it was 1-1 or whatever the case, and he's come out and he's looked, we lacked a little bit of maturity. How many times have we heard that? Do you think next season, he looks at his team and he goes, okay, it was a great first season. Some of these players, the youth players like Mount and, Tammy and whoever else, they've done really, really well, but I'm not going to, kick them out of the team. They're definitely going to be in the squad, but I need some more experienced head, knowing that the likes of Willian, Pedro, and a few other people might go, that he's going to look for experience.
He's going to sign players, but because this one I'm about to say is because I recorded a podcast that's not yet out with Mediano and Matisse yesterday. Mediano brought up a talking point that I have never, ever I've never thought of this. Matisse and I were left in shock, but I'm not going to go too much into it. I don't think we should do that on here either, because that's a completely different talking point entirely. What is Lampard's purpose with this squad? Why was Lampard brought here? Chelsea have lacked a spine for a very, very long time. So this has actually changed my perspective on who we should sign and who should be benched and all of that. I mean, yeah, this season was just like he needs more experience and all of that. But the core group of players he's trying to build with the youth players he's using, I don't see them getting bench time for the tenure, for the amount of time he's going to be here, because these players that we are looking at right now, your Tammys, your Reece Jameses, your Mason Mounts, your Billy Gilmores, all these players, are going to form, or are the players that Lampard is going to use to form the next spine of Chelsea. That spine, Didier Drogba, Lampard himself, Ashley Cole, John Terry, those players, all of them combined, they formed the spine that were at Chelsea for almost a decade. And those guys were serial winners. They were winning season in, season out. They won the Champions League. So for Lampard, because Mediano was just like, how do we know that's not his objective? How do we know we know that we aren't setting up to actually get... I mean, like I said, this is all speculation. speculative because it's a fantastically brought up point. Because I mean, Lampard is brand new to management. Who else was going to come to this squad with building a spine in mind? So I don't necessarily see. I'm not going to go too much into it. You have to listen to the podcast to get all that information.
Of course,
Good plug. Good plug.
So, but
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
want, but just to sum up, I don't see them. A lot of these players that everybody feels okay, yeah, I would Mason Mount play start next season. He's going to get benched. Let's actually watch and see. I don't see Lampard benching these players because he's trying to build a core that's going to be there for the next decade. So that's what I
Nah.
think with regards to all of that.
This is a perfect segue, and I want to finish this off. And how fitting! I wanted to actually finish it off with Jay. I feel like he's got a lot of not to say you boys don't have knowledge. You boys have excellent knowledge, but I wanted to finish it off with Jay. And Jay, what I want to ask you is, I listened to Alex's podcast for Mark Schwarzer. Not only he's Australian, which is very, very close to me. I wanted to hear a lot about the historic moments that we've had in 2005 when we went to the World Cup. But the podcast really surprised me. I just didn't know that it would have so much else, because I thought when Mark would come in, it would be a lot about Australia and a little bit about Chelsea stuff. But he actually gave a whole heap of stuff, which Dami just touched on just a moment ago, talking about the spine. And I want to ask you this and finish it off here. Mark Schwarzer talked about Mo Salah, Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, specifically. And they were in the similar age at that point of Mason Mount, Tammy, Reece James, kind of Billy Gilmore right now. Mark Schwarzer specifically said a few things. He said, a lot of people don't know this. Jose Mourinho, he was forced to get success from the get-go. He didn't have the time to build someone like Mo Salah or Kevin De Bruyne. Luckily Hazard at that point was a level way above them, so he was shining already, so he was going to stay. But it was too difficult because Mo Salah at that point, he was I think 19. Even Kevin De Bruyne wasn't too far away. It was probably 20, 21 at that stage. They just didn't apply themselves hard enough in training. The likes of your Didier Drogba's back then, Lampards, and so on and so forth. So what I want to ask you, off the back of what Dami just said, players like Tammy, Mount, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Billy Gilmore, whoever else, right? These are very young individuals. Do they absolutely understand what it takes to be a Chelsea, star for that prolonged period that Dami was saying that, they will be the backbone of this team?
I think they do. I think part of it is you have to learn as you go. It's like pretty much every other job. You learn a lot of skills as you go. So Mount doesn't know, or Tammy doesn't know, Tomori, Reece, they don't know firsthand what it's like, but they've been at the club and they've felt what it's like. They've seen the players in the distance training. They know what's expected of them. Like I've mentioned, they don't really see the club as a stepping stone, I don't think. So I think they do have what it takes. I think it does take time. I think we have to judge the success of this team in 3 or 4 years' time. When you go to buy a house, you don't look at the foundations. You look at the finished article, right? These players are nowhere near the finished article just yet. They will be in 3, 4, 5 years' time. Gilmore's 18. In 5 years' time, he's 23. I'm 22, so that's around my age. So those things. They just take a long period of time, and I think they do have what it takes. And lastly, what I'd really like to see next season is a slight change of language, and by that I mean youth players, because I feel like that's a bit of a get out of jail free card. And you hear lots of fans saying, "Oh, we need experienced players, right? We need some more experience." But then everyone wants Sancho. Sancho's a youth player. If you look at it in that way, he's 19. So I think if they're good enough, they shouldn't be considered as youth players. They are now first-team squad members. They should be criticised and praised as first-team squad members. Just because they're young, they're now ready. They apply themselves. They take the minutes. They play the games. They get the points. They score the goals. They're not youth players anymore. They are first-team squad members. There's a difference, and I think when they're treated as such, and next season that will happen, and the season after it will definitely happen, they'll grow and develop mentally, physically, and they'll be ready to take on the challenge of going for titles, going for cup runs, and next season I think it's vital. And we've spoken about this. Dami, Alex, Matisse, and I, we spoke about it on that podcast. That I think it's really important that we go for a trophy next season, because when you install that winning mentality into a group of players that had it at youth level together, but when they do it for the first time at in a men's team at the top level, they're going to be unstoppable, because they are. Personally, I think they're the best young players in the world collectively. We've got one of the best academies on the planet. We're giving them the chances. They're producing. They're only going to get better. Everyone knows that in a top 5 league, if you're a young player, the more minutes you get, generally the better you play. So all of these things combine, and it's a really slow process. It's like slow cooking something. It's not done after an hour or two. It takes 10, 12 hours. We've got to give these people 2, 3, 4 years, not just next season. We're not finished next season. We're not even halfway through. We have to trust this process and back the boys. And if they don't do it or decide to move along the way, then we'll bring players in. And everyone's touched on perfect points. You know, ZX27, he's experienced. He's played a lot. He's technically gifted. He's been scouted for 3 years. So they're going to bring in the right players to support the spine. And also, I think as well, I worry about comparing Tammy to Drogba and Mount to Lampard, because we have to look at these players on their own terms, in their own way, because that's one, a lot of pressure, and two, Chelsea fans need to be realistic now. That was 8 years ago, you know. That was a long time ago. Let's look back at what we had, be really proud of it. We've all enjoyed these moments as Chelsea fans together with friends and family, but now we've got a new journey. It started at the beginning of this season with Lampard and the players, and now we've got to back it over the next 5, 10, 15 years, because some of those players can still be here, and most of them will be here in 10 years' time. So it's a long process that requires a lot of vision, a lot of respect, and a lot of patience that I really hope that Chelsea fans are willing to adhere to, essentially.
Oh, fantastic, man. Fantastic. I think it's a very good point that you said. Next season, we can't be... I might tweet this. Sorry if I steal it. I've stole some of your lines and tweet.
No, go for it. Go for it. I don't mind.
I'm very proud about that. I think it's very important to understand that next season we don't keep referring them as youth players. As you said, you know, they're part of the men's team. So you're no longer a youth player. You're not playing for the youth team. You're playing for Chelsea's first squad. So and it's very, very important to start drilling into their head that we are here to win trophies. You know, yes, you're going to be given time. Yes, as John manhandled CFC. I think we better give it up, man. It's John from now.
We're branding that way.
As John was saying that, you know, it's very important. You know, yes, give them time, but we're here to win trophies as well at the same time. So they need to understand that. But thank you so much to every single one of you guys. I've learned so much from each of you guys. Some fantastic points. Dummy, that little plug at the end, mate. Honestly, you got me hooked now, because I'm going to be listening, because that sounded very, very interesting. Michele, thank you so much, man. You don't speak that much, but when you do speak, you speak a lot of sense, and I like that. That's the kind of attitude I like. Jay, I will be seeing you soon. John, you're like my partner in crime, so we're never going to... This is your channel as well, and as much as it's mine. So thank you so much, every single one of you guys, and thank you for all the listeners that were listening. Hopefully you guys had a really, really good time. See ya.